chapter 47. What have we learned till now? Chapter 46 began a new method, for lack of a better term, and how we can produce a love and awe of God in order to help us be a better divine servant, to be doing Torah mitzvahs in a better way. And what was that? K'mayim panim el panim, kein lev adam el adam. As King Solomon says, that the water reflects the image of the person, so likewise the heart of the individual, what we show another is reflected back to us. The metaphor that the Alter Rebbe uses is that of a great mighty king, which is reference to God. He comes with an entire entourage. The whole divine retinue comes, and they see a simpleton who is a pauper, a nothing of nothing, living on a dunghill, taken out of the dunghill and cleaned up and brought into the inner chamber of the king in the palace, a place where no one goes, not even the great ministers, and yet this pauper does. It's a metaphor of God Almighty who came down to Egypt, where the Jews were enslaved, living on a dunghill, the metaphor, and took us out of there. And he didn't take us out of there through the ministers on high, not an angel, but God himself, and brought us into the inner chamber where he gave us the most intimate connection to him through a hug and a kiss. The hug is every time we do a mitzvah, as every mitzvah is like a limb of the king of God, that he embraces us when we do the mitzvah, and we embrace him. And a kiss, which is the metaphor for the study of Torah. Through the study of Torah, we have a divine kiss. We are actually mouthing the words, just like in a kiss, two lips come together. We mouth the words of God. Not only that, but the Spirit of God has entered into us, just like the breath, an exchange of breath. The Spirit of God has entered into us, meaning his wisdom becomes my wisdom, his vision becomes my vision, to such a degree that we become sanctified through doing a mitzvah and study of Torah, sanctified, or rather betrothed, Asher Kidishanu, as we say in the blessing of a mitzvah, that we have been betrothed to him. In other words, a union. And it's just like in this physical world, between a husband and wife in a marital union. Likewise, there's even a greater union, infinitely greater, between us and God when we do a mitzvah. And through that, we also become sanctified, as the word Asher Kidishanu, Kadosh, means also sanctified. Sanctified meaning we're connected beyond the human condition to the divine in such a way that the Jewish people collectively become eternal, and individually that this world doesn't define us. We are connected to God in such a way that we can call him Elokeinu, our God, in that moment of doing a mitzvah. All right, so that's wonderful metaphor of God took us out of Egypt, and gave us back then Torah and mitzvahs, and gave us the experience of Mount Sinai, of his presence. How do I apply that in the here and now? Even though the Torah mitzvahs, yes, he brought us into the inner chamber, but the experience of that inner chamber was in Mount Sinai. Where do I have going out of Egypt now? This whole metaphor is, you were in Egypt, and he brought us into the inner palace. Well, where's the Egypt now? What does that mean? How do I apply the metaphor specifically to me today? So the Alter Rebbe says, quoting from the Mishnah and adding something to the Mishnah, In every generation, the Mishnah says that we have to see ourselves as if we have been taken out of Egypt. The Alter Rebbe adds to those words, not merely in every generation, but every day, a person is obligated to regard themselves as if they've been taken out of Egypt. That God took me out of Egypt. How so? Well, when we understand Egypt, as I'm sure many of you have heard before, the word Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. The word Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzar, which means a limitation, the restrictions. So on a personal level, it means going out of my restrictions, my limitations. And what's my restrictions, my limitations? Well, God gave me a soul that's not restrictive. That's a part of Him. However, He put it into, as the body is called the serpent's skin. In other words, a negative force. My soul's put into that negative force, meaning negative in the sense that it has its own agenda. The body has its own agenda, which is not a godly agenda. And the soul is put in there, in prison. Limited, bound, as the word again, Mitzrayim, meaning limitations, constraint. Every time I do a mitzvah, I'm absorbed in the unity and the light of God, the Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God, through His Torah, through His commandments. I'm connected to Him. I'm going out of my Egypt. I'm going out of my restraints, my limitations. Because when I do a mitzvah, I'm bound up with God. I'm not bound up to my body's desire and agenda. It's powerful. So in other words, God's taking me now out of that dunghill. That dunghill is the serpent's skin, in this instance, the body, right? And therefore I'm going out of Egypt today. And this is particularly so when we say the Shema every day. Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What does that mean? What does it mean that God is one? One doesn't mean that God is one and there isn't, we don't believe in Zeus or we don't believe in any other deity. It means that there's only a oneness of God. God is the only reality. So when we do a mitzvah, we're nullifying ourselves to the reality of the oneness of God. Now, Abraham and the patriarchs merited this, that they were one with God at all times. Totally one, totally subjugated, nullified to the oneness of God, that was the only reality. Today, when we do a mitzvah, we've been given a heritage, a gift, that when we study Torah like we're doing right now, we're actually taking God Himself. This is the idea that God said, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. Anechi, the word Anechi means I of God, is an acronym, Ananafshi Savis Yahavis, that God says, I have put my very soul, my very being into writing, into the Torah. And when you study the Torah, you're taking me. You're united and one with me. And this is the meaning. You're taking the very essence of God by the study of Torah. And a perfect unity and oneness with God. We're taking Him. The Yikhuli Truma, take from me an offering. For me, when you give, the offering is Truma, the Torah. The word Truma is Torah Mem. Torah, the 40 days that Moshe got it on Mount Sinai. That Torah, study it, it's taking God Himself. Because the Torah is one with God, as His wisdom and His divine wisdom is one with Him. As opposed to us, it's not. In other words, our wisdom is not one with us, but The divine wisdom of God is one with him, and therefore when we study it, we're actually taking him. We're bound up and totally united with him. And this is a unity that is attainable to every single Jew, because they have the commandment to study Torah, which commandment means the capability to connect through the study of Torah with God himself. And with this now we can understand that in the Shema, we speak at the very end of the third paragraph about going out of Egypt. What is the acceptance of God as my reality, my king, my subjugating to him and connecting to him and being one with him, the oneness of God, right, have to do with going out of Egypt? Well, that's the whole point that we brought out. Egypt means our limitations. We have to go out of Egypt. Limitation means that I can feel myself separate from God. I can feel that I have another reality besides God. That there's my agenda and God's agenda. I want this and he wants that. So I do what he wants, but I still have what I want. That's not when we recognize that there's, through the Shema, that we are accepting the oneness of God, and therefore everything becomes then in our lives a way to connect to that oneness of God. Torah becomes a vehicle that we connect to the oneness and unity and become totally absorbed by the divine light. We do a mitzvah, totally absorbed by the divine light. That's taking us out of our Egypt, our restraints, our restriction, our limitation. And therefore, going out of Egypt is what we have to do every day. Going out of our limitations, the human condition, the agenda of the body, and to do the mitzvah that gives us the capability of being united and one with God. So therefore, Egypt is that daily event. It's not just merely a historical event that happened, that God in his boundless love took us out of Egypt way back when. No. God is taking me now out of my Egypt, my personal limitation. How? Right now, I'm studying Torah. I'm taking him. I'm bound up and united one with him. When I do a mitzvah, I give charity, put on tefillin, whatever it is. God is then showing a boundless love to me right now. That in this moment, I have that capability. That's personalizing it. That's making it now not just a beautiful metaphor of something that happened in the past, but it's happening every day. And therefore every day I have to make that effort to get out of my Egypt. That's why the Shema gives us that capability. To make sure we say the Shema, the morning, the evening. That's the story, folks. Any questions, any comments? Israel from Deerfield Beach, John from North Carolina, Mendel from Crown Heights, Robert from Boston. I think I'm missing some people here. Ellis from Sarasota. Marilyn Bocato from Delaware. Shaheen from New York. Susanna from Hollywood, Florida. Damien from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Russ. Yeshakayach. David and Batya from Montreal. Annie. Stanley. Shalom Tarek from Egypt. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Rita from Boca Raton. Good morning. As from Russia. Thank you for joining. Andrea from Mississippi. Brenda. All right. All right, folks. Sharing is caring. Please share the Alter Rebbe's teachings with others. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful